Machu Picchu is one of the seven wonders of the world located in Peru. It is a popular tourist site for the cultural stories that can be discovered beneath the heavy stones. The architectural feats are not always recognized, even though the site was built in the 15th century. This amazing city was once inhabited by the Incas, a mighty empire that thrived in a place that is mostly still standing. Let's take a journey into the past and discover what these people did that is so influential to modern Peru. Imagine yourself hiking away from your home to get to your dinner. You live on a farm with your close friends and extended family. Your house is secluded and the village is a short trek away. To get all of your supplies, you must take a trail to the heart of the village. You speak Quechua, the native language, and live in a place where you do all your work, no animals to help you. A central market is where you do all of your shopping. You stock up on valued maize, sweet potatoes, chili peppers, and quinoa beans. Your son goes to the school for 4 years in the city while your daughter stays at home creating legendary textiles. You must keep your house clean and orderly, for you are preparing a feast as a payment for those who helped you build your home. There are no currency systems, so food was used as a payment. Your friend is visiting from another province tonight. There are 4 of them in the land of the Inca. The only way to travel around is the road system that covers 25,000 miles, most of the Inca's land. It is not a road like modern people would think of, though. There are no cars because the Incas had no wheels. They also lacked powerful working animals, iron, and a writing system. Somehow the group managed to support 12 million people throughout Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru, though. The civilization started small in Cuzco, but the 15th century expanded to build cities as large as those in Europe. With all this land, who is better to rule it than an emperor, right? There were 4 city-states and a leader for each. There was also an almighty Inca emperor, the ruler of all. These emperors did not have the same responsibilities as presidents or governors have today, though. Since there was no currency, there wasn't much to manage there. And the other big thing governments have to manage today is military. But the Incas were as diplomatic as they come. Military was always a last resort, and only when other people attacked them would they defend themselves or show any signs of violence. However, when conflict did arise, the people were not very friendly. In the time of the Spanish conquest, the Inca people were not at their highest point. 2 brothers were in line for the emperor of all of the Inca, and these brothers both wanted the throne and would go to any measure to get there. Unfortunately, they were not thinking of their people and took advantage of them. They started a civil war, causing the population to plummet, and just when they thought it couldn't get much worse, Francisco Pizarro arrived. Francisco Pizarro was a Spanish conquistador who traveled all over current Latin America. His exploration to Peru was in 1523 when he was 48 years old and on his last journey. He and his reinforcements arrived in Peru, surprised to encounter the Incas there. His groups first tried to coexist. However, the Spaniards had brought disease and the dwindling Inca population decreased even more. This did not start the war, however. What did was an accident. When Pizarro had to meet with the emperor, they met at Cajamarca. Pizarro wanted to convert the natives to Catholic, so he offered the Bible to Atapuerca, the ruler. However, since the Inca had no written language, he had no idea what it was or how to read it, so he set the book down. This was a mistake, but Pizarro took it very seriously. He had 168 men hiding nearby, ready to attack. So Atapuerca was abducted, and the peace was destroyed. A few short years later, Peru was owned by the Spanish, and the Incas were nowhere to be seen. Inca people have not all disappeared. They were depleted for a while, but when Peru claimed its independence in 1824, after a 3-year war, the culture became reappearing. The Spanish spent a long time demolishing their culture, so it took a while, but today you can find the Inca traditions all over. In music, religion, food, and even celebrations, Inca culture seeps through modern Peru. Peru has some large cities, but there are many more small villages or towns. This is where the Incas are today. There are no reservations. The Incas are just part of the population. Sometimes in these villages, Quechua is the only language spoken. One of these villages is Chinchilla, near Cuzco. An Inca family lives here and farms, just like their ancestors did, and their children will. Modern-day Peru is like a tapestry. It has been woven over time by various cultures and people. It is not finished and will continue to evolve as new cultures come and go. Through hard times and striving empires, Peru has been a country with importance and beauty. The people living in Peru over time have influenced the culture in so many ways. This country will continue to change into the future, and the Inca and Spanish people can finally coexist.
The languages of Peru are fascinating, each in their own way. The official language of Peru, Spanish, came from Spain, as many of you should know. But the other two languages, Quiche and Aymara, started in Peru. Let's take a trip back in time and discover the origin of each language. The language Spanish is spoken mostly around the northeast part of Peru, but is spoken all throughout Peru. The Incan language Quechua is spoken in less than 25% of Peru, so it is not spoken much. Lastly, the language of Aymara is only spoken in the southmost part of Peru. Aymara is a dwindling language in Peru. The language Spanish arrived in Peru when the Spanish conquistadors landed on the Incan land. The conquistadors wanted to convert the Inca to Christianity, but the leader put the Bible that he was given down because he couldn't read it. The Spanish took this as a huge offense and killed the leader of the Incan. After wiping out the Incan culture, they took over Peru. Once Peru got its independence, the other two languages popped back up. Each language has been changed over time, but they have stayed the same in many ways.
Everybody knows a language needs people to speak it, and people need someone to manage them. The people who manage them are the leaders.
Leaders are an important part in any culture and play a big role in Peru. Like who fixes roads and other community problems? The leaders do. To show any proof of work, you wonder how have Peru's leaders changed the country over time? Also, how have Pacific presidents and prime ministers done? So let's dig in to Peru's leaders. Since Peru cannot stay the same all the time, it has to change. That is where Peru's leaders come in to help and try and change the country for the better and sometimes the worst. They can help with world problems that affect their country a little bit or try to fix small problems in their country. Would you like to live in somewhere that would not change and had unfixed problems? So leaders have changed the country, and that is why I am wondering how. Ever thought of a problem that needs fixing? This is where a leader comes in and tries to fix it. So, in Peru, they've changed the country to try and fix global warming so they can try and save the Amazon rainforest, try and get the economy back on its feet, and try to keep the citizens under control. These are some of the things that have changed in The leaders of Peru are currently trying to help with global warming so it does not destroy the Amazon rainforest. Would you want to watch one of the biggest rainforests die to global warming? Another thing Peru's leaders are working on is the economy. Peru's economy is growing, but this growth is so businesses are bringing the economy down, making it something that the leaders must handle. Finally, the citizens are one of the things that leaders must take care of. They must try and fund projects and fix citizens' problems with limited but plentiful amount of money. Those are some of the ways Peru has changed because of its leaders. Peru has two different main leaders, the president and the prime minister. The president is in charge of big problems like global warming.
Ollanta Humala is the present president and has been president before and is now trying to redeem himself by fixing Peru's problem today. The Prime Minister, which is presently Pedro Catarino Bellido, is in charge of gatherings and people. An example of a gathering is the Nation Allegiance Gathering Agency, and the Prime Minister helps with that. The Prime Ministers have been fired frequently by presidents not giving them much time to do anything great. This is why I think Peru has complicating leaders that right at the moment are unstable. But if everything comes together, they can be strong again. It is not surprising that the leaders are having a hard time since their troubled history. Peru has emerged from a 20-year dictatorship in 1945 and has had a hard time keeping presidents for their 5-year ruling period. Those are other ways Peru has changed by its leaders. Peru has interesting leaders who do their best to try and change the country for the better. That is how Peru's leaders has changed the country.
Peru is full of stimulating mountain peaks, desert locations, rich tropical rainforests, blue waters, villages, modern cities, and ancient ruins. Recently in the country of Peru, economics have been booming. In fact, its economy grew by 9.8% in 2008 and 6.3% last year. Unfortunately, some of the people living in Peru have experienced severe poverty and conflict. Most of the 20 million other people who live outside of Lima, the capital of Peru, are living in underprivileged circumstances. For instance, a citizen of Lima earns 21 times more than a resident of the outback. The trend tends to be that the poor are the dark-skinned and the rich are mostly white. Even though Peru's economy seems to be booming, everyone wants to know why there are still so many Peruvians living in poverty. Well, let's take a look back in time to help us understand why Peru is what it is today. During the period of 1532 through 1572, Peru experienced their first war called the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. This war was one of the most important campaigns in the Spanish colonization of the Americas. Years of explorations took place with 168 soldiers and their leader, Francisco Pizarro. This tribe kept continually returning back to the area to find more and more valuable possessions. Ultimately, they gained power with the Spanish, which was when the Incas refused and began fighting again. It took years of conflict when at last the Spanish won. The conquistadors desired to expand their land, spinning campaigns, and overcoming the tribes of Chile and Colombia. Years after this war was yet another prominent battle for the country of Peru. This war helped gain independence for Peru, occurring in 1811 through 1824. It was a series of military conflict which resulted in the proclamation of independence. The leader was a man named Tupac Amaru II, who led an indigenous uprising. This means that the dark-skinned citizens were preparing for battle against the Spanish. Finally, after a long time of fighting, Peru was able to gain independence on July 28, 1821. Today, National Independence Day has been the most celebrated and essential traditional holiday in Peru. Peruvians take the time to remember and thank those who suffered to help gain the freedom they have. Following this battle, Peru's political situation was unstable, which caused turmoil internally. They dealt with a war with Ecuador and the Great Depression, but eventually, in 1998, the peace treaty was signed. Peruvians have been attempting to stop political corruption for decades, especially to end the present-day war in Peru called the internal conflict in Peru. The internal conflict in Peru was and is the 13th war, which started in 1980 and still remains today. 70,000 Peruvians, the majority of them indigenous, died fighting between
government forces. According to the Center for Justice and Accountability, the article says that both sides of the Civil War committed systematic human rights atrocities. The number of dead and missing surpasses the casualties of all other wars in modern Peruvian history. In the 21st century, Peru has started to try reestablishing the rule of law and holding accountable those responsible for atrocities. It has been a hard attempt, but with the help of many Peruvians, they have faith that their economy could still develop and be successful soon. In conclusion, I hope that this was able to show you the many wars Peru has experienced and their influences. I also hope that this data allowed you to fully understand how past events affects the present and how contention can lead to negative outcomes like the economy in Peru today.